How's it everyone, this is Lolcohol, and in today's video I want to talk about how to create a comprehensive and clear strategy that generates very consistent currency gains while working toward a greater goal that has the potential to create much greater spikes in currency. This is probably very intuitive for more experienced players, however newer players probably haven't thought about this. Even if you are an experienced player, maybe you haven't thought about it in quite such concise terms. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to explain my strategy and break it down and then go into some other examples just to kind of cement the point. So let's pop over to my Atlas tree and have a look. So the way I break it down is I've got a foundational strategy. This is something that has almost zero startup cost, very little investment, but it generates consistent currency regardless of luck. I'm not worried about RNG. This doesn't matter if I get lucky or unlucky. It's just always happening in the background, always generating currency. However, then I'm working toward things that bump up my currency gain. These are things that are slightly more RNG dependent, but they're consistent enough that I can rely on them. However, all of this feeds into a greater picture, which is rolling the dice. Things that are RNG dependent. However, if I win and get something good, I get a very, very, very big spike in my currency. So what is my foundational strategy? I'm mainly farming essences. I'm sure many of you are doing this. Essences, essences, essences. These are consistent currency gains. Every single map I'm in, I'm getting essences. I could sell these if I wanted. If you're doing this, you can sell them and you know you'll be getting consistent currency gains. However, I'm using these to craft, which I will explain how that generates bumps and spikes of currency. But for now, just essences. This is a consistent foundational currency gain. On top of that, I'm doing expeditions. Expeditions are also a kind of foundational currency gain. I'm getting little artifacts every map. Sometimes I'm getting logbooks, which I am running. Again, if you're doing something like this, you could just sell the logbooks. There's something that is fairly reliable that you can use to make more currency. On top of that, I'm using Tuition when I've farmed enough of my currency to get some more smaller currencies and then sometimes Exalts. On top of that, I'm doing little profit crafts on the side, and the kinds of maps I'm farming, I'm mainly doing Guardian maps and Conqueror maps and sometimes Shaper maps. At the end of these, I'm always getting little boss fragments, and often they're duplicated because of the whichever one of these nodes. Yeah, one of these. So when I complete a map, I'm often getting 2 little fragments. However, these strategies lead into bumps. So for essences, I'm using my essences to craft certain items. If I hit something good, I can list it for a couple of X, and then if it sells, suddenly I'm 2X richer. This is a bump. It's not something that is completely consistent and reliable, but it is something that I've done it enough now that I can rely on it, but it's not always happening. It's like little bumps in my currency tab. Another thing would be logbooks. So for logbook drops, I can farm up a bunch of those, then run those, and then I can do my Tuition, and then Tuition generally, well, actually almost reliably without fail will give me a couple of Exalts and a whole lot of bubblegum currency and stack decks and chaos orbs. This, when I do it, when I run all my logbooks, my currency tab goes up. Another example of a bump or possibly even a foundation would be something like an investment. So if I buy a House of Mirrors now, in a couple of days, this is just slowly accumulating. And if I really need the currency, I can sell it. So that's more of like a foundational investment, but it is, I guess, a bump. If I do decide to sell it, let's say in 2 weeks, then that 20x that I've invested is now worth 40. More examples of bumps would be maybe getting good influence bases from Searing Exarch or Hunter or Elder or whatever. And then invitations, if I'm doing Maven, I know you're probably looking at this thinking, why am I doing both? It's because I hate having to respec constantly. So I have spec'd into Maven and Searing Exarch, and depending on the kind of maps I have, I'll run those. But sometimes I'm getting invitations, and these drop splinters, which then gives me the opportunity to move into my next stage, which is my spike stage. I'll go into that, but again, here's more examples of bumps. I could get a synthesis map. This is a couple of X, or maybe even 50 chaos. But these are things that are more than just small gains. It's not like 5 chaos a map. It's like this thing happens, and I can sell it for 50 chaos or 60 chaos or an Exalt. Conqueror Exalts. Here, this is an example of a bump. Could get a little Awakened Support Gem. I could get a Conqueror Exalt. I could get a Conqueror map or something like that. But let's talk about spikes and how all of these strategies that I'm employing feed into the potential for extreme currency gains. So while I am farming my essences, these are feeding into crafts, and these crafts, if I get something decent, I can sell it for a couple of exalts. However, if I get lucky, I could get something that's worth 10 exalts. That I would consider a bit of a spike. Something that is, I'm constantly working toward it and trying to make sure that if I do it enough, the odds are more likely that it will happen. But here's an example of that. So essences feed into a bump in the form of little profit crafts. Sometimes I'll get lucky and that'll be a big spike. Expedition, I'll be doing my expeditions, getting little drops here and there. However, these feed into logbooks, which then feeds into Tuition. Tuition is just constant little currency gains. However, if I go over to Gwenin has the potential to give me a Mage Blood or a Headhunter. It's not something I can rely on. However, it is a potential. I could get it. So that's another example of a spike. Another example of a spike is map fragments and bosses. I'm sure many of you have killed bosses and it's dropped like 7 portal scrolls. You're very sad, but there is the potential for Maven to drop one of the best awakened support gems. This could be worth 20, 30, 40 exalts. It's not something I can rely on. However, there is the potential for it. Same with Elder, Uber Elder. I could get a Watcher's Eye. It might be trash. It might be worth a mirror. Who knows? Same with Cirrus. I could get a good support gem. Maven, Searing Exarch. I could get one of the new jewels that are very fancy. I could get a Cortex, which I could either sell for a bump, or I could run it and maybe get a Bottled Faith. So this is an example of all my mapping leads into boss fragments and invitations. You could stop there and sell them, consider that a bump. However, you could do those bosses, which could lead into a potential spike. So hopefully that makes sense, but if it doesn't, let me give you some more examples of things that might make a little bit more sense. So magic finding. Magic finding, very popular strategy. People will run maps that have high value divination cards like Tower, which can drop the Nurse, or Burial Chambers, which can drop the Doctor, or Cemetery, which can drop Brother's Stash. People will run these maps over and over and over. All the while, their foundation is going to be generating small currency drops, getting simulacrum splinters if they're running Delirium, getting essences, getting scarabs, harbingers. They could be running harbingers to seduce the pack size. Maybe they're running breach. They're getting a lot of Chayula splinters. These are all things that are always happening regardless of RNG. It's not something you need to worry about. It's just always going to be happening. However, they do get bumps in the form of divination cards drops. So when you do get lucky, and you will, if you keep doing it over and over and over, maybe a Doctor will drop, maybe a Brother's Stash will drop, and then your currency tab bumps up. But however, the bigger picture for Magic Finders is going to be the spikes in the form of very unlikely but potential Headhunter drops, Mage Blood drops, Squire drops, maybe Mirror Shard drops from Harbingers. So regardless of whether or not they get that Headhunter, along the way they're finding Doctors or Nurses, Brother's Stash, and they're always getting little currency drops in the form of simulacrum splinters and essences, what have you. Another good example, something like Heist. If you're doing Heist, you're just in every little heist mission, whatever you call it, contract. You're getting currency, you're getting divination cards, stacked decks, catalysts, whatever. But then when you run your blueprints, you might get bumps in the form of a valuable anomalous gem. And then if you run enough blueprints, you're going to get spikes in the form of high value replica uniques, maybe Shroud of the Lightless or whichever other ones are good. I don't do Heist. But hopefully the idea is there, where your foundation is something you can rely on. It's nothing special, but it's always there, always consistent, and then you're constantly working toward potential for big spikes of gain. So I'll encourage you to all look at your strategies. What does your atlas look like? Are you able to identify your foundational strategy? Something that just consistently generates currency regardless of RNG? Are you able to identify bumps in the form of things that are going to knock up your exalts by a couple here and there? And then are you working towards some kind of greater goal, some kind of content that has the potential to really, really impact your currency tab? Do you have all of these? If you don't, maybe review your atlas, see if you can find a way to make slight adjustments. However, I feel this league, more than any other in the past, it's possible to run kind of parallel or synergizing strategies to cover all bases. So in the comments below, let me know, what is your strategy? What is your foundational strategy? What is your bump strategy? What is your spike strategy? I'm very curious to know what you think about this and about how my brain works and if this makes sense to all of you. Also, I want to say thank you to Nico. Thank you for talking to me about this and kind of helping me get my thoughts straight about this. But yes, have a wonderful day, everyone. Make sure to have your foundational bump and chase spike strategies. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.